We got breaking news. Complete chaos erupts amid rogue judge's order.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. Phone lines are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. You may have heard it in my voice, but once again, those judges are at it again. I feel like we are the Scooby-Doo gang, and they are the monster, or the person hiding behind the monster mask.
Right, not an actual monster. We know that's a costume, Logan.
It's 25 minutes of us trying to figure out and then having the same show once again, which is, it was a rogue judge the whole time. And I would have gotten away with it. Yeah, it always feels like the same deal. This is the Scooby-Doo effect, as we call it here, and they call that in Washington, D.C. That's something we need to coin.
The Scooby-Doo effect.
Yeah, like SDE. What is that Scooby-Doo effect?
Oh, everybody knows that.
Everyone knows that. You gotta. So it's the new FOIA, really.
Right.
1-800-684-3110. Have your voice heard on the air today. And Will, let's break this down because this has to do with the case involving the defunding of Planned Parenthood. As you know, they said, yes, you can defund Planned Parenthood. And they said, well, let's hold off and see. Now it is even more of a mess, as it sounds like 25% of Planned Parenthood can still be funded.
Cannot be funded.
Cannot be funded.
Or can be funded. It is convoluted. You're right the first time. Here's what happened.
It's like the way they play the money game when it comes to life.
Right. So the judge, remember, gave a 2-week temporary restraining order blocking the implementing of the big beautiful bill portion that defunded Planned Parenthood. They had a hearing on Friday, which was 3 days early because Planned Parenthood tried to get it moved back. But the government said, no, we can do it early. So the judge took that up. They had their hearing early on Friday. And yesterday was the judge's own deadline for ruling on a preliminary injunction.
Remember, we talked about that being the deadline, that this was going to happen very fast. And look, Cece Howell is going to be joining us, one of our senior attorneys here, to really break this down from a legal perspective in the next segment. But I wanted you to have an understanding. This is what we're talking about, what we had talked about last week, saying there was a specific deadline put in place by this judge.
That's right. So the temporary restraining order would only last until midnight last night on the 21st of July. And then either the law would go into effect or she would have to rule on a preliminary injunction. Now, when our team came in this morning and I was trying to explain what the judge did, I led with this. And so I want to say it to everyone. This is going to hurt your brain, the logic and the hoops that the judge jumped through to try and come up with some sort of protection for Planned Parenthood. And at the end, she granted a preliminary injunction for about 25% of Planned Parenthood affiliates. She did not rule on a preliminary injunction for the remainder of them. And she said, I'll take it under advisement. Even though she had given herself a deadline, she didn't say, I don't grant a preliminary injunction in them, or I do. She just said, I'll take it under advisement, which essentially kicks the can down the road, but it allows for the defunding of that 75% for now.
Yeah, and so you understand, the reason it's the 75% is she's saying roughly 25% of Planned Parenthood facilities do not provide abortions. Of course, we know a lot of state laws have changed. We know that a lot of state laws now no longer allow abortions. So, of course, what she's saying is you can't justify defunding those places that don't support abortion. Not support abortion is the wrong word. If you're Planned Parenthood, you support abortion. But if you don't provide abortion, because Planned Parenthood is broken up into individual states, individual regions and districts, it's not just all one corporation. Now, there is the big corporation, and that is what's been defunded, 75% of it. Look, this fight is going to continue on. We're going to have to get some specificity on. I go, well, we gotta get ourselves together here.
Right,
man. Yeah. You know, you can get yourself together. You can support the work of the ACLJ. It's 9 days left. Number 9 days left in our 35 years of justice drive. All donations are doubled today. We're going to break it down a little bit more with Cece Howell. She's a legal expert. She's going to be able to tell you exactly what this all means, what it looks like moving forward. And if she can't, well, I'm just going to tell you that she can. 1-800-684-3110 if you want to be heard on the air today. Again, phone lines are open. I'd love to hear from you. When you hear rogue judges once again, how does it make you feel? How does it feel? We'll be right back.
As Congress weighs President Trump's reconciliation bill, funding for many organizations is in flux.
If passed as written, this budget could cut Medicaid and eliminate federal funding for Planned Parenthood.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
President Trump's reconciliation bill will cut Medicaid funding from organizations like Planned Parenthood that provide abortions. The move is projected to cost more than $50 million. Planned Parenthood Advocates of Montana is sounding the alarm. Martha Fuller, who leads the group, says the big, beautiful bill will prevent Planned Parenthood locations from billing Medicaid.
Robin Chambers with Focus on the Family says the use of taxpayer dollars to subsidize abortion providers is morally repugnant. Planned Parenthood doesn't deserve a single penny.
Federal judge is temporarily blocking the Trump administration from enforcing a ban against Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood sued the Trump administration yesterday over a provision in the new tax and spending law that defunds its services. The legislation passed last week and it was signed into law by President Trump on July 4th.
Congress decides how to spend the money. If Congress orders money spent and the president doesn't want to spend it, there's a role for the judiciary telling the president he's got to spend it. But if Congress says we're not going to spend this money, there is no role for the judiciary to tell Congress they have to spend it anyway.
On July 18th, there is a hearing on a preliminary injunction, which of course is the actual case that's going to decide whether this case can go forward or not. And the temporary restraining order is something that just temporarily enjoins it. So we will, on the 18th, have a hearing. And we will be watching that of this month.
So next week.
That's right.
4 days, yeah.
We will be watching that. And the TRO expires on the 21st. So the judge has to give her opinion by the 21st. And we will be watching. I'm sure if she doesn't rule correctly, the government will appeal and the ACLJ will be there.
Welcome back to Sekulow, Senior Counsel. CeCe Hiles joining us in studio to break this down. I think we got to restate it a little bit because a lot of you are just joining us. And it is, as Will said, it's a bit of a head scratcher. As another judge, the same judge said, hey, I'm going to give myself my own deadline. And the deadline passed and they said, okay, 25% of Planned Parenthood can remain funded. 75% can remain defunded temporarily for now, but I can look at it later on. I mean, am I missing anything here?
I mean, that's
pretty
close.
That's almost like I put it into AI and said, make this easy.
Make it easier. I think you could have also broken AI with this case because, CeCe, the judge went to great lengths to find a way to keep some money flowing to Planned Parenthood. And it goes into, I mean, when you read the factual statement basis of her order, it just goes into how wonderful and how necessary, life-saving Planned Parenthood is, and that by picking and choosing, the government is putting millions of people's lives at risk. That's always the favorite angle of everyone, is that if you cut money somewhere, by default, someone's life is at risk. That's kind of the status quo for government funding at this point. But what this judge did was effectively grant the injunction, so allowing this subset of Planned Parenthood affiliates the ability to continue to receive government money, while the vast majority, at least for now, because of her deadline, the TRO, the temporary restraining order, expired, they won't be receiving Medicaid reimbursement or federal dollars. Break down what the judge did here and really kind of why it was so unusual for us to see this.
Yeah. Well, and just like you said, as I was reading the opinion, it's about, I think, 30 pages long. As I was reading the opinion, it definitely reads like an advertisement for Planned Parenthood. So you know exactly, as you read this, where this judge's alliance and allegiance lies, definitely. However, she gets very creative because, you know, in our amicus brief that we filed in this case, we absolutely argue the fact that, you know, there's no constitutional right for subsidies, that Congress has the power of the purse, all of those, arguments, which are the constitutional arguments that, yes, the federal government, when they're giving money, they can have strings to that. So she goes out and says, okay, I'm going to go to the freedom of association. That's where I'm going to go, because some of these Planned Parenthoods, and just to kind of put it into numbers, there's 47 members that the Planned Parenthood Federation has. So there's 47 members.
And the members are essentially districts or states.
Usually
or
a state.
Planned Parenthood, wherever.
Massachusetts or
Right.
of Utah, or we have of Tennessee and northern Mississippi.
Yeah, they have them broken down.
Right.
So they're organizations, probably so they can say, okay, this one needs more funding, less funding.
That's right.
When they're
So
big corporate.
the 47 members, there's about 600 clinics that these 47 members operate. And actually, 2 of the members joined in this lawsuit. So the Planned Parenthood Massachusetts and Planned Parenthood Utah were also members that joined individually. But she reaches to those members that actually didn't join individually. But she reaches to the other members and she basically says, look, if you're just associated, let's say you don't comply with, you provide abortions and you get less than $800,000 worth of Medicaid reimbursements, your only kind of harm or crime is that you're associated. But because of that association, the way that the law is written, it lumps in affiliates. She's saying, well, that then violates your freedom of association for those 10 clinics out of the 47, the 10 members, not clinics, members, the 10 members that don't fall under that $800,000 and providing abortion limit. And so I think you've already addressed this. I mean, overall, it is probably about 75% of the Planned Parenthoods that are not getting their funding. So that is a very, very good thing. But it's an interesting opinion that she's carving out.
The door stays
this
a little open.
Yes, abortion exception, and the fact that she's taken it under advisement. So what that means to when an appeal can happen.
And that's right. So, one, it also seems like she's set up a scenario where you could have both the defendants, which would be the government, and the plaintiffs, which would be Planned Parenthood, both appealing her preliminary injunction ruling at some point because the government saying you gave them too much, the Planned Parenthood saying you're not giving us enough. So she may be trying to have threaded the needle for optics to some degree. But here's the other angle of it that has me scratching my head is that we got the case of Trump v. Casa, where that was about the preliminary injunctions at the Supreme Court, these nationwide universal injunctions. And the Supreme Court basically said that you can issue an injunction, which is what we're dealing with here in this case, in a case before your court, to people that are before your court in the proper jurisdiction. And what we're starting to see out of this is where she wanted to say Planned Parenthood isn't that closely interrelated when it comes to the funding issue. So for government purposes, you have to look at them as just a bunch of different organizations that hang out. But when it comes to the injunction purposes, they are so intertwined that I can give injunctive relief to these 10 members, only one of which was before the court. That would have been Utah. Massachusetts Planned Parenthood, who was in her state, did not get injunctive relief.
Right.
But others that weren't a party of it. So is it like she's trying to have it both ways, that Planned Parenthood isn't that closely related when it comes to funding, but when it comes to the purpose of this, I can give close to extra special injunction relief to parties that aren't even a part of this lawsuit in practicality.
I think we're seeing, again, abortion distortion. Like you're saying, you know, they're very tightly knit for one reason that, you know, supports her pro-abortion stance, and they're not so tightly knit for another reason that doesn't support her pro-abortion stance. We see that. And I think what you said about, you know, these injunctions and what the Supreme Court has said, now judges are trying to get very creative of how they don't run afoul of that, how they're, you know, can possibly say, I'm not giving a nationwide injunction. Although she is giving an injunction, again, like to individual parties that were not before her court. They were not parties to this case, but she's lumping them in because they are an affiliate or a member of Planned Parenthood Federation.
And on top of that, it seems that she found that pathway, and with the briefing, obviously, that Planned Parenthood Federation for America put forward of this First Amendment violation, the freedom of association. As a matter of fact, she even goes into detail and says that, you know, by defunding these individual clinics, it could harm Planned Parenthood Federation for America because that could discourage membership in their organization from states that don't allow abortion, and therefore it impairs their ability to engage in advocacy So now we're tying federal dollars to advocacy organizations, which just seems like a bizarre situation in and of itself. But on top of that, Planned Parenthood Federation for America doesn't receive Medicaid reimbursement. It doesn't have clinics. It is the umbrella organization. So if we're starting to separate it out, their only harm is that people may not want to pay them dues because they may lose federal subsidies.
Right, absolutely. She has crafted and created this freedom of association harm, and that's what she's relying on for the whole entire opinion.
I want to take this phone call. We got a call specifically for Cece, Jerry in Rhode Island. While you're here, Cece, I want to make sure you have time to take this call.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead, Jerry.
Cece, my question is, after I've heard your analysis on a lot of cases, do you see the detached neutrality in this writing of this judge? And if not, is there oversight for those kind of judges?
Well, okay, Jerry, if you listened to me earlier, which you were, the first thing when I read this opinion, it sounds like an ad for Planned Parenthood. So there's no guessing where this judge's allegiance and alliance lies. She's not neutral. And yes, if judges are elected, then you can get rid of them through that election process. If they're appointed, then you need to make sure that you're, again, voting for the people that are appointing judges.
Just depends on your area.
It's kind of that kind of situation of that's the oversight. Definitely not neutral. You can read the opinion. She's very much pro Planned Parenthood.
What's the next step here? Okay, because our team is obviously involved in Massachusetts. We're involved so much in the life campaigns right now. We got about a minute, but what are we going to do here?
Real quickly, we will watch this. If an appeal is filed, if the government files an appeal, we'll file an appeal supporting. And if the Planned Parenthood files appeal, we can file appeal again or a brief against.
We may have 2 more briefs coming up just at this appeal stage of the injunction, because now she set it up where we'll probably see one from the government and from Planned Parenthood. We will want to weigh in on behalf of the ACLJ members in both of those.
Of them, right?
That's right. And you can be one of those ACLJ members, ACLJ champions. It's someone that gives on a monthly basis. Right now, during the last few days of our 35 years of justice drive, your donations are doubled. That means there's another member who has pledged to match any donation that comes through. It's a whole big group of members. So if you give $10, it becomes $20. If you give $100, it becomes $200. Understand how helpful that is. So do it today. We only are able to offer those kind of things during very specific months because you have a very specific amount of people who are ready to unlock during a certain amount of time. So I encourage you to do it. If you've ever thought about supporting this broadcast and our legal work, they both go hand in hand. And they both can't exist without you. So go to aclj.org/35 or scan that QR code on your screen. Give me a call if you want to be on the air. We'll be right back.
We haven't heard much about Hillary Clinton's emails in a bit, but here we go. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley just released declassified documents showing, he says, that the FBI failed to fully investigate evidence, including thumb drives, as part of that investigation. Now, here is what Grassley says. The Comey FBI's negligent approach and perhaps intentional lack of effort in the Clinton investigation is a stark contrast to its full-throated investigation of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, which was based on the uncorroborated and now discredited Steele dossier. Now, then FBI Director James Comey, at the time, defended that investigation.
The Department of Justice is reviewing a criminal referral from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in connection with those claims that Obama-era officials had manufactured and politicized intelligence against President Trump.
It has been 8 years. I mean, over 8 years. It is time for the American people to understand what happened here.
This is the first time, I think, with what Tulsi Gabbard has put out, that we see Obama's fingerprints on the origins of the Russia collusion hoax.
Now the question becomes, how do we proceed? Are these people going to be held accountable? She used the word treasonous. That is correct.
It's hard to see at this point, Chris, where charges are not brought against at least a few, perhaps several of these Russiagate perpetrators. Now, let's disabuse the audience that Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton are going to be charged or hauled off in handcuffs. That's not going to happen. What I'm looking at more closely, and the people I'm looking at more closely, Chris, are people like Lisa Monaco.
What Tulsi did, referring this to the Justice Department, God bless her and God bless the Justice Department. They should look into this as a conspiracy for what it is. Thank goodness Cash has said the same thing. This has to happen because this is where it all began.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We want to update you also on what we were talking about yesterday with Tulsi Gabbard. You're releasing hundreds of documents that really, according to her, in her words, not mine. Now, look, I know she's taking a lot of heat for it, as expected. The moderate and liberal press have both said, this is ridiculous. We can't believe it. There's no merit here. But again, her words, not mine, says some treasonous activity that came down during the Obama administration to try to thwart the election of President Trump. So that's her statement. That's paraphrased, but a lot of those words were in there.
Treasonous conspiracy was also in there.
Treasonous conspiracy.
Right, yeah.
Okay. We're using some pretty big words here. Words that, by the way, are hefty and mean a lot. So like I've said, though Tulsi is one of our good friends, she has been on this show for years until she became the week before she became the director of national intelligence, was on this show many times a week, and someone who I really respect and I think is a great person. But these are some hefty words. You start throwing out, was it treasonous conspiracy?
Right.
That's not nothing here. Okay, now she refers it to the Department of Justice, right? The Department of Justice says we'll take it under consideration for criminal intent. Now, President Trump did respond as well. And I want you to hear specifically from President Trump, again, in his words, not mine, about these documents.
But you know what? If you look at those papers, they have them stone cold, and it was President Obama. It wasn't lots of people all over the place. It was them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And except for the fact that he gets shielded by the press for his entire life, that's the one they... Look, he's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say, let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries. You've seen some pretty rough countries. This man has seen some pretty rough countries, but you've never seen anything like it.
That's, again, a pretty big statement to make. He said, all the words. He essentially, he is guilty. Those are the words. Look, he's guilty. It's not a question. I like to say it. Let's give it time. It's there. He's guilty. This was treason. Those, again, very strong words from the President of the United States. I do think you got to tread lightly here. But, it is what it is, especially when we're dealing with this. And not that I haven't looked at all the documents. I haven't gone through everything. But what I've seen so far, there's some rough stuff there. But there's also presidential immunity, which we know happened.
Right.
He did say this was every word you can think of. And knowing President Trump,
there's a lot of words.
There's certain words. A lot of them we can't say on the air.
Obfuscate is one of them.
Obfuscate was
he
one
did
he
say
threw
that
out there.
one.
I feel like that's the one. He's like, have you heard this word? Learn this word.
It's a good word.
Obfuscate.
Right.
I can't say it.
So here's the other angle to this as well, is Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa, who has been for a long time trying to get the public release of the classified annex to the Inspector General Horowitz report on Hillary Clinton, her email scandal. The Inspector General looked at the way the FBI handled it, came to conclusions that James Comey did not handle it appropriately. But there was this classified annex that really gave the detail of how he came to those conclusions. And what is interesting about this is now, finally, this is public. There is redactions of sources and methods, as is usual when you're dealing with work product from the FBI. But Chuck Grassley was able to put this out in public. And here's what he had to say about this. Because remember, this entire treasonous conspiracy we're talking about, one of the big angles of it is Russiagate, the way that they weaponized and manufactured intelligence, as Tulsi Gabbard told us earlier this week, to try and hamstring and do this years-long coup, as she called it, against President Trump so that he could not fulfill his mandate from the American people. But a lot of this started with the white glove treatment that James Comey gave Hillary Clinton when investigating alleged crimes when it came to
white glove treatment. I like that.
It was like she had special treatment.
I know what it is. Yeah, I know what it is. I'm saying I liked it.
Good
I like that
metaphor.
you're saying that. When you book a nice hotel.
Right.
Say white glove treatment.
So what they're concerned is that this started even before in the way that they handled this server issue. Remember, the federal government was completely fine under the Biden administration going after and indicting President Trump, former President Trump, for having classified materials at Mar-a-Lago which he had the power to declassify. But the Secretary of State that was mishandling classified information was told by James Comey, you're good to go, shouldn't have done it, whatever, nothing to see here. But here's what Chuck Grassley had to say after revealing this information. It was a complete cover-up, completely ignoring their responsibilities, another way of saving the politicization and weaponization of the FBI and the Department of Justice, turning a blind eye to key evidence while investigating Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information on this private email server. These findings prove that the Clinton investigation wasn't thorough and complete. In fact, you could say they didn't even start to look at it. That's what's in this classified annex. They had thumb drives, they had emails, they had all this stuff that they didn't even investigate. They had it, didn't look at it. So therefore, we're showing another angle of the weaponization and politicization by James Comey that started even before they decided to conjure up this Russia hoax that they perpetrated on the American people after President Trump won, because they thought they had it in the bag for Hillary Clinton by just ignoring her crimes.
Yeah, I think that's true. Phone lines are open for you, 1-800-684-3110. I also wanted to say Tulsi Gabbard, again, has been in the news this morning, also because they have released now hundreds of thousands of documents, 230,000 documents on the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and again, his family said, please respect them, have empathy for them right now as we go through it. I haven't had time because this broke really this morning to go through any of it. But you know what? This is another one of those promises that was kept. They said they were going to have all the information. It happened with JFK. It's not always what you're looking for. It's not always the here's who did it or whatever it is. But I can see some of the information that comes in from this MLK assassination document dump that is fairly fascinating. And I'm sure it's going to be worth a read for a lot of you. Again, a lot of us were not born in that era when that happened. Our parents were. But here in Tennessee, you know, one of the places you go see is where that moment happened.
Lorraine Motel.
Yeah, at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. And I took my son there just less than a year ago to see that spot. It's what you learn about in history class. So I think having more transparency on all of these things is going to be helpful and helpful for the country to heal as well. I want to know about what you think. And look, I see a lot of people watching. I know these are very heady topics. When we do these heady topics, we don't get a lot of callers. We get a lot of viewers because I know a lot of you are just listening and you're wanting to hear or you're wanting to watch and really take in what we're doing here. But phone lines are open for you, and I'd love to hopefully answer some of those questions at 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. If you're in the chat right now on YouTube, by the way, I don't like to call out people. I'm not going to call anyone out by name. You can take your racism somewhere else. This is not what we're talking about here. If we bring up MLK assassination or President Obama and you immediately jump to some racial slurs, you are not welcome on this channel. So goodbye. And I'll make sure our moderators see that as well. Phone lines, though, are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. As we head into the second half hour of this broadcast, I want you to join us, not only supporting us during the ACLJ drive that's happening right now, celebrating 35 years of justice. I also want you to join us for the next half hour. Scan that QR code if you can, make a donation, it's doubled. And some of you don't have the access to the second half hour through your local radio stations. That's fine. We are live right now. It's 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern time each and every day on ACLJ.org, on YouTube, on Rumble, and of course later on archived. Most of you watch this not live, but if you are live right now, we appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm here in Missouri. The ACLJ has been deputized by the Missouri Attorney General to defend its lawsuit against Planned Parenthood. We are proudly standing behind Attorney General Bailey while he fights this lawsuit against Planned Parenthood. The ACLJ believes with Attorney General Bailey that this is an egregious lawsuit that allows Planned Parenthood to care more about their political clout than it does to care about the patients they claim to serve. This case may be taking place in Missouri, but it's important to every single state. Planned Parenthood, if they're successful here, they'll go to the next state and then the next state. And each time it'll be easier and easier for them to circumvent common sense laws and pro-life values. Because of your support, we get to be on the ground in Missouri defending pro-life values and continuing our mission that we have for 35 years, which is the sanctity of life and religious liberty. Thank you for your support. We are so thrilled to be joining the fight for the next 35 years.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. Phone lines are open. About 3 lines are open right now. 1-800-684-3110. 1-800-684-3110. Sometimes if you see me do this, it's like when they're training the velociraptors.
Right.
Yeah,
I didn't see that one.
Hold. You didn't see that one. That's the Jurassic World. That's
I didn't see
later
that
on.
one. Yeah.
That's Chris Pratt. You know,
I'm just the original two.
The GOAT.
Yeah, but I like the original two. Jurassic Park.
The Lost World.
The Lost World.
Which is what we call America right now. Whoa. All right. Phone lines are open for you.
That was a good joke.
Whoa, Lost World. 1-800-684-3110. You know any good quotes from the Lost World?
No.
No, I don't remember any of them. Anybody in there?
We're going to need a bigger boat, right? That's from the Lost World.
That's not even in Jaws.
I know. I was trying to get on your bad side today because you're already telling me to hold.
Hold?
Yeah.
That's Braveheart.
Right.
That's different. I don't know where we're at right now, guys.
I do. We're in the studio. We're talking about
I know
what
where
happened.
I am physically.
We're talking about what happened in Massachusetts because this is
well, this is a hard pivot. All right, we're talking now about the very easy and topic that you want to talk about, Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, of course, there was in the big beautiful bill, there was the fact that Planned Parenthood got defunded. Now a judge, as you'd expect, another rogue judge comes out and says, "Can't do that right now. Let's put a temporary restraining order on you." They say, okay, we're going to make a decision in the next couple weeks. Here's our deadline. They make that decision. That decision is 75% of Planned Parenthood gets defunded. For now, 25% the ones that don't provide abortions, because, again, Planned Parenthood is set up into different member states, states and chapters and areas. So the ones that don't provide abortion, they can still receive funding. Those that do provide abortion, they can't for now, but maybe we'll take it an advisement. Of course, the ACLJ is on top of it when we have to be, because these kind of things get very nuanced. Very headache-driven, as Will said. But there's a lot of people out there who are concerned about this. We're also talking about that tranche of documents that came out from Tulsi Gabbard and the Director of National Intelligence, both the MLK documents that just dropped this morning, that I'll be honest, we've not had a chance to review yet, but I very much am appreciative that they said they were going to do it, and once again, they did it. That is something that people have been asking for a very long time. And then, of course, the documents that came out and look, President Trump, again, now using the word, what was the specific phrase? President Trump says that President Obama.
It's treason.
Look, he's guilty. It's not a question, I like to say give it time, but he's guilty. This was treason. This was every word you can think of. So, again, they're not really. They're not really placing their bets in a place where they're not making sure that they politic around this.
Right.
They are using guilty of treason. And that comes with a litany of responses that have to come out when you start making these kind of claims. Of course, they made these claims about President Trump for years.
Right. And they took him to court and they tried to have him put in jail and they tried to come up with every single thing they could to stop him.
And I don't know, man.
I
don't want to live through this again. I mean, this is where I get people.
I agree.
People need to be.
I don't want to live through it again. And also, I don't know, based off of the immunity ruling, I think it'd be hard for you to argue to a court that President Obama calling a meeting, when you take it to the base level of what an official act is, even if the outcome that he doesn't have immunity for that.
I think also.
But these other individuals, I mean, we lived through it, Logan.
Yeah.
It was horrific what they did to our country.
But you know what happened then? President Trump won in a landslide because everyone saw it and said, that's not what we do here in America. My concern would be, now you're just playing revenge, and the same thing will happen once again. Now, I've said this before. We live in a pendulum. In our lifetime, we have seen Republicans and Democrats back and forth and back and forth. It's never. People like change. People like new. New is always better. Well, phone lines are open, 1-800-684-3110. I want to hear from you. There's a lot of calls coming in. We got Jeff Balaban joining us in the next segment. Is that right? He's with ACLJ Jerusalem. There's some updates there, not specifically even on Israel, but of course, once again, the taxpayer funding was going to fund not just Israel, but specifically almost regime change in Israel. It's Pretty interesting. We're going to break that all down with Jeff Balaban coming up. And remember, when you support the work of the ACLJ, you also support the ECLJ, the European Center for Law and Justice, ACLJ Jerusalem, and our international affiliates. We'll be right back.
In the wake of the Hamas terror attack on Israel, the American Center for Law and Justice acted swiftly to support the victims and their families. Through our offices in Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, and Europe, we launched a massive global effort to represent the families of hostages taken by Hamas. On October 7th, 2023, the world watched in horror as Hamas launched a brutal and coordinated terror attack on innocent Israeli civilians, slaughtering nearly 2,000 innocent victims and abducting hundreds more. Our ACLJ legal team filed with the UN Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances on behalf of 10 families, urging immediate international intervention. We submitted demand letters to the European Union, the US Congress, and the UN Security Council. And our team stood side by side with some of these hostage families on Capitol Hill and at the European Parliament, helping them share their personal stories of this living nightmare and appealing directly to lawmakers and world leaders to intercede for their loved ones.
House Republicans met with and heard from family members of some of the victims.
Thanks to international and domestic pressure, as well as legal efforts such as ours, approximately 158 hostages have since been returned to Israel alive, including a young mother and her 3 children directly represented by your ACLJ legal team. Every life saved from terror is a victory, but the nightmare isn't over. As of the latest reports, Hamas still holds around 58 hostages. 2 of them are remaining clients. The ACLJ remains committed to fighting for their release and ensuring that justice is served.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Phone lines are lighting up right now. We only got one open, but you can give us a call still. We'd love to get you in the next half hour, or the next segment. We're going to be taking a lot of your calls and comments to wrap up the show. We're going to be joined now by Jeff Balaban, head of ACLJ Jerusalem. This is pretty interesting, and the ACLJ was very involved. This is something you need to really look at the way your government runs, and that is through an investigation. The ACLJ, again, kind of led the charge in. I'll let Will go through some of the details here. We're able to uncover a lot of information that showed that not just that the Biden administration and the Obama administration was not necessarily the biggest friend of Israel. And again, remember, this is not during this current wartime. This is during relative peace. This is for the Biden administration. This is coming out of the Abraham Accords. I'd say probably one of the most peaceful times in the Middle East we've ever experienced. And they were actively working with up to the tune of $1 million in taxpayer dollars.
No, you left out a very key letter there. $1 billion.
Billion. You said million.
I said billion.
Okay, maybe our phone scratched. I thought when you said million, I actually thought.
Not that much.
Yeah, I mean, you can barely buy a house in Nashville for that. But $1 billion that was going specifically to fund organizations whose goal in Israel. Remember, these are Israel is very diverse politically. I think that there is sort of this overarching. It'd be like if you thought everyone in America was a MAGA Trump supporter. It's not how it is. Israel's very diverse in that sense, in terms of there were conservatives and liberals. They were going to fund those specifically anti-Netanyahu organizations that were essentially going to try to either stop or have a regime change at the time, depending on when it was, wherever he landed. But people who are specifically against what would be considered the more conservative movement of Israel. That is what they were using your tax money to do. Not support Israel like a lot of people claim, but to actually be involved in the politics so deeply.
Well, Logan, I think this ties directly to what we were talking about with how the Obama administration weaponized intelligence, manufactured intelligence to try and affect regime here in America with the first Trump administration. This is something, Jeff, we uncovered during the Obama years, that the U.S., through the State Department, was funding Mahmoud Abbas's son for the express purpose of trying to defeat Bibi Netanyahu. Now, Tell us about how this started, because this is a report coming out of the Judiciary Committee and Jim Jordan showing that close to $1 billion from the State Department, from USAID, and from the Department of Defense was going to these groups in Israel that were trying to basically bring about regime change and get rid of Bibi Netanyahu in Israel during the last 4 years.
Right. There were rumors floating around for a long time, based also on what had been happening during the Obama years, of money coming from Democrat groups and potentially even from the administration when the Democrats were in the White House, trying to undermine the elected government of Israel. Now, let's be clear, it's not the same system in Israel. In Israel, it's a parliamentary system where you have direct party elections. You elect a slate of people. Those slates of various parties form coalitions. Right now, the governing coalition is headed by the party with the most mandates, which is Likud, which is Netanyahu's party. And so it's the most important and biggest bloc in the coalition, but these coalitions are extremely narrow. So a party with even 3 or 4 mandates can collapse the entire government at any time. It's not like you wait 4 years for an election. So an entire coalition could collapse. And so it looked to us like they kept on finding issues to try and rile up the public to create that kind of hostility to topple the government. And right before the war started, and one of the reasons the war started, according to Hamas, was they saw the Israeli populace was fractured and angry and fighting in the streets, not violently, but there's a lot of hostility over the issue of judicial reform. And it turns out, we looked into this, the Israeli government keeps records, obviously in Hebrew, of foreign money coming in, and we started taking a look at it, and it looked suspicious to us that some of the money looked like it was being laundered through nonprofits that were coming directly from the United States of America, from American tax dollars, from the Biden administration, going to groups which are then being funneled through to support these street protests being mobilized against Netanyahu. It's, by the way, a playbook that we see in America, which is why we need to look for it here. We brought this a couple of years ago already to Jim Jordan, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, to his office and a couple of offices on Capitol Hill. And they started looking into it. And last week, they published a report and they put out information, as you say, tracking about $1 billion or so of money going from the United States government directly to organizations trying to rile up street support to essentially topple the Israeli government.
Jeff, and when you put this into context, when you think about the 2024 election, in the 20-month campaign cycle, the Federal Election Commission put out presidential candidates raised about $1.6 billion and spent over $1.3 billion. Now, that's just the campaigns themselves, not including super PACs and things of that nature. But that's talking about the candidates in the United States for president. Now, take almost that much, about 66% of that amount was then being funneled by our government into a country the size of New Jersey to try and influence their elections. It can't be understated how effective our government could have been by influencing an election with $1 billion.
Number one. Number two, think about it. This is the same party that was riling America up over foreign interference in our elections, in America elections, at the same time as, according to this report, they're funneling an enormous amount of American tax dollars to try to destroy Israel's governing coalition, Israel's democracy. And so this is, I think, a bombshell. This is a scandal, a terrible scandal. And we're glad that the Judiciary Committee really dug into this, followed up, and is now making this public and looking for answers from the public.
And Jeff, I think, one, it goes to show that the complete disregard that both the Obama administration and the Biden administration actually have for elections when it doesn't help out their one party. But also, when you think about this, I think we finally have found something that can bring us together with the BDS movement, because, they want to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. I think we can defund this money to stop influencing Israel elections.
This money we're okay with stopping going to Israel.
They should be happy with us defunding this kind of money going to Israel, right? I mean, you'd think that would be something they'd be okay with. Of course not. They want this type of aid to keep going. They just want Ben and
Jerry's.
Exactly.
Yeah, look, it is no question that it's the same mentality, the same that is trying to really change, really destroy the American concept of governance is really trying to do the same thing in Israel. Coming out of America, it is extraordinary the amount of money being spent on this tiny country. And it's also truly terrible to see the amount of hostility they were able to generate in the streets here, and the amount of turning brother against brother, and how, again, those who committed the terrible atrocities on October 7th said they knew the time was right because they saw that Israel itself was becoming frayed at the seams, and there was internal anger over this judicial reform issue. Well, it turns out, yeah, America was funding that out.
That's funny. And Jeff, I think that is something, we only got a couple minutes here, but I think that is something that doesn't get talked about at all in America. It's Israel, if you're on the left, Israel bad, the Palestinian people, or you would say Hamas, good. But they don't even understand. And maybe it should be another one of those, proof that Israel is one of the free areas in the Middle East, is that it is that fractured. The fact that you can have people who believe whatever they want to believe politically and can take to the streets and can be against a political regime. Even Jewish people, even Israeli people who have a problem with the Netanyahu administration, that exists, and it exists in a way that is not unlike America, where you're able to actually talk about this, where if this was in, any of the surrounding countries, it could never happen. But here they paint Israel as just this sort of right-wing extremist.
Well, Israel's not behaving the way the left wants it to behave. The left wants Israel to essentially commit suicide and abandon its protection of itself, and Israel is somehow stubbornly refusing to just commit national suicide, and so they're trying from the outside to rev up the process. But yes, it is extraordinary. Israel continues to be amazingly resilient, and there were moments, beautiful moments, even during those fights, even during the anger in the streets, of protesters going up one escalator and down another escalator on the train, meeting each other on both sides, carrying banners opposite sides, reaching out and hugging each other or shaking hands to show they're still brothers. And so there was some element to that, but yes, it caused tremendous strife in Israel. I believe they're still funding certain protests right now over other issues in Israel, these groups. And it's very, very important that the American government is looking into it, the Congress is looking into it. And I am very happy that we were able to bring it to their attention.
Absolutely. That's why we have an ACLJ Jerusalem, even our ACLJ DC office can work in tandem to make sure this kind of thing happens. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. As we head into this last segment of the day, I want to hear from you. We got two lines open at 1-800-684-3110. It can be on any of the topics we talked about today, or if you have a question or comment that is at least within scope, you can call in. I know a lot of you are watching right now, thousands of you that watch live, and of course the hundreds of thousands of you plus that watch later on or listen later on. If you are brand new and you're watching right now, however you're watching, because I know about half the people that watch this show each and every day have never seen my face before, never seen Will's pretty face before, I'm going to ask you to hit that subscribe button, because that's a great free way to help support the work of the ACLJ and help get this information into more hands. That being said, we always want to remain that this show and all of our work is without a paywall, and it's always free for you to share. We can't do that without you. So that's why we have this right now, ACLJ matching 35 years of justice drive. Be a part of it today. We'll take your calls and comments coming right up.
As Congress weighs President Trump's reconciliation bill, funding for many organizations is in flux.
If passed as written, this budget could cut Medicaid and eliminate federal funding for Planned Parenthood.
The yeas are 218, the nays are 214. The motion is adopted.
President Trump's reconciliation bill will cut Medicaid funding from organizations like Planned Parenthood that provide abortions. The move is projected to cost more than $50 million. Planned Parenthood Advocates of Montana is sounding the alarm. Martha Fuller, who leads the group, says the big, beautiful bill will prevent Planned Parenthood locations from billing Medicaid.
Robin Chambers with Focus on the Family says the use of taxpayer dollars to subsidize abortion providers is morally repugnant. Planned Parenthood doesn't deserve a single penny.
Federal judge is temporarily blocking the Trump administration from enforcing a ban against Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood sued the Trump administration yesterday over a provision in the new tax and spending law that defunds its services. The legislation passed last week, and it was signed into law by President Trump on July 4th.
Congress decides how to spend the money. If Congress orders money spent and the president doesn't want to spend it, there's a role for the judiciary telling the president he's got to spend it. But if Congress says we're not going to spend this money, there is no role for the judiciary to tell Congress they have to spend it anyway.
On July 18th, there is a hearing on a preliminary injunction, which of course is the actual case that's going to decide whether this case can go forward or not. And the temporary restraining order is something that just temporarily enjoins it. So we will, on the 18th, have a hearing. And we will be watching that of this month.
So next week.
That's right.
4 days, yeah.
We will be
Friday,
watching that. And the TRO expires on the 21st, so the judge has to give her opinion by the 21st, and we will be watching. I'm sure if she doesn't rule correctly, the government will appeal, and the ACLJ will be there.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We're about to take your calls and comments right now. So give us a call. 2 lines open, 1-800-684-3110. We saw a lot of people, because I said our pretty faces, our beautiful faces, Will. And we just nicknamed you. You're Big Beautiful Will.
That's right.
So,
not Big Beautiful Bill. That'd be my father.
Yeah, it's my father's name. It's not my name.
Don't call me that.
Yeah, I'm Big Beautiful Will. Would you buy Big Beautiful Will merchandise? Let me know. I can throw together some shirts.
Okay. Yeah. Is it going to be as great as the Rapture Prepper ones?
I don't know. I got a email from those people who printed those. They go, you've had more orders than any first day. It dropped off pretty significantly after that first day. But that first day, we sold a lot. I got a tote bag, by the way, if anyone's looking
I think
for
you
one.
were half the orders, though, because you bought one of everything.
I wanted the whole set.
Right.
And now I look at it and go, well, it's a beautiful design. All right.
It's really good.
Yeah, big, beautiful design. Let's go and take a phone call. Let's go to John in Illinois, who's calling on line 1. John, go ahead.
Hey, you guys. I'm really getting tired of the revenge thing. These guys did something wrong. Let's go after them. Not because of revenge, because they did something wrong.
John,
I think the country's ready for this.
John, I appreciate your call. I want to reiterate what I was saying. What I was saying is because of the immunity case, that it's going to become a little bit harder to actually make this happen. And, of course, do you want this then to happen to your president moving forward? Because this is going to continue on in a vicious cycle. Unfortunately, it's where we are. I understand you want justice. Everyone wants justice. And I don't believe it's specifically out for revenge. But you got to make sure you play these cards right. And, John, I appreciate you calling. I think you were on a motorcycle in Illinois, which is pretty cool. We don't get a lot of callers on it could be Batman.
Batman called into the show?
Yeah, like I was thinking Illinois, Chicago.
That's the, Dark Knight series.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The Nolan verse.
Yeah, my Gotham City is New York.
Yeah, my Gotham City is Gotham City.
Oh, okay, fair.
I'm a bigger fan of Bloodhaven. Let's go ahead and continue on. Let's go to Candy, who's calling from Georgia on YouTube. Candy, you're on the air.
Okay, I like motorcycles too. Anyway, I have a question.
Rock and roll.
Can the rogue judges actually stop what was passed by Congress, since defunding Planned Parenthood, the abortion is a legislative law?
Candy, what a question to ask. Because what we've learned is, everything seems to be written with these ridiculous loopholes.
Right.
Where it doesn't matter the intent of the Supreme Court, doesn't matter the intent of the President of the United States. These judges, they Jurassic Park it, Will. They find a way.
That's right. And Candy, what is going on here is that's why they're using the First Amendment claim, violating the freedom of association for the Planned Parenthood affiliates, because Congress can't pass a law that violates the Constitution. So they had to go to something like the First Amendment and try to create this right to funding by default through the First Amendment association when it does seem ridiculous, right? But that's how you can overturn laws that are passed, because you can pass a law in Congress and get signed by the president, but if it violates the Constitution, it can't stay on the books, and that's where you get challenges in court. So, it seems bizarre. Congress has the power of the purse. They decide to not fund someone. That isn't some constitutional right to continue funds flowing to an individual organization. But we're in a bizarre place. They found a weird loophole. About 25%. 20 to 25% can continue to get it, at least under this preliminary injunction. But we'll see where it goes. But we know at the ACLJ we will be filing more briefs very quickly, because we're not going to stop on this.
All right. Thanks for calling, Candy. Let's move on to Deborah, who is watching on the Salem News Channel. Deborah, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Go ahead.
You're there?
We are here.
Okay. I'm just wondering when these people are going to start being publicly prosecuted for what they've done to our country.
Yeah, it's a process, Deborah. Let's just go through it, because right now, DNI, Gabbard, releases these documents. Then those documents go to the Department of Justice with a recommendation for some sort of criminal prosecution.
So, yes, there was a criminal referral from the agency, the Director of National Intelligence's office, the ODNI, to the DOJ. They now have the evidence that was turned over and referral of a crime. Then it has to go through the normal process. They have to do an investigation, look at the evidence, decide if they want to take individuals before a grand jury. Then the grand jury has to return the indictment, a true bill that these people are indicted, and then you move forward with the prosecution, with the case. So
the answer is, Deborah, you'd be lucky to get it through in this Trump administration.
You can indict quickly if they have the evidence, but I mean, a trial could last a very long time.
Could last years, and of course, it's the American way. You got to stretch things out. You
have the right to a speedy trial, unless you're the deep state, then never happens.
Yeah, and then they can somehow say 25% gets defunded or gets funded. 75%, we'll see. Maybe I'll think about it. Maybe I'll spend some time. Let me mull it over a little bit. Get that, Will?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Susan, who's calling in Maryland on line 5. You're on the air, watching on YouTube, which, man, so many thousands of you join us. 508,000 subscribers on YouTube. But understand, that's only about half the people that watch the show. Millions watch this show each and every week just through YouTube alone. It's really remarkable. We are living in a different world. There's been that whole debate over Stephen Colbert and the cancellation and what happened, what didn't happen. What didn't also happen is the fact that millions of you watch us. More people watch us than watch a lot of these shows on YouTube. It's a changing world. Embrace it or die. Let's go to Susan. Maryland, you're on the air.
Well, support ACLJ. If Trump could prove treason, would a president accused of treason be treated differently as a vacating president?
Yes. Susan, we at least know how President Trump was treated. It would have been very different if he was still the sitting president.
Right, and because the actions that they're saying are treasonous or treasonous conspiracy happened during his time as president, that is very similar, at least if you want to look at an analogy or a parallel. The government went after President Trump for things they alleged he did while in office. And what did the Supreme Court come back with? Is that there is broad immunity for presidents, things that could be considered official acts by the president while they are in office. That's why making phone calls that the Democrats like to harp on to state officials, because that's what it was. And that is a normal thing that a president would do. Call state officials, look into the integrity of the election.
Normal thing.
That is considered an official act. That is why the same thing that I think they would have a hard time bringing charges against President Obama are because he was calling a meeting of principals. That is something that presidents do. Now, the people underlying that took orders and went and did things may be a lot easier to go after. But I think in this, the naming of President Obama gets the headlines. I personally, my analysis is just my 2 cents.
It's all the
I think
other,
it is
the
very hard for them to go after President Obama for this because he was the president. While he was president, he did this. And I think they would argue these were official acts.
Yeah. All right. Hey, that's going to do it for today's show. We appreciate everyone joining us. Will gave some great analysis. Big, beautiful Will. You did a great job.
I'm going to wear that shirt tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm going to go spray paint.
Okay. I know a guy. 1-800, not 1-800, what am I saying? Go to aclj.org. Let's throw the QR code up on the screen. I want you right now. Donations are doubled during this 35 years of justice drive. There's only a few days left during this drive. Final 9 days to have your gifts doubled. Again, at aclj.org/35. In the month of August, as everyone sadly goes back to school. I hate talking about it. I hate thinking about it. We're going to do something a little different to keep celebrating the ACLJ 35 as we will for the next year because it's such an important moment. And we know for you, you've been with us for a long time or whether you're brand new, you want to help us out, this is the only way to do it. Help us stay free. ACLJ.org.